So let's have a look at this article before I show this video by Jessie Gender, who has a YouTube channel that you might like to check out. There's been sweeping anti-trans laws all over the United States. In an extraordinary attack on trans rights, conservative state lawmakers proposed more than 110 anti-trans bills this year. On the first day of Pride Month, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, who I think is going to be the next president of the United States in 2024, he signed a law banning transgender girls from participating in girls' sports teams in the middle of middle school through college. So that's a great way of outing trans kids, and it's also a punishment. And I'm not going to go into all the stuff about, whether it's fair or it's not fair, whatever, for trans kids to be playing against others, in sports. I think there's been enough of that online that you can look at, and I'm not talking about the rubbishy things like Joe Rogan, what Joe Rogan carries on about. But anyway, so that's one trans law that's going to be is being passed in many, many states in the US. And then the other one, which is pretty awful, is the gender-affirming healthcare. The bulk of the other anti-trans bills sought to outlaw gender-affirming healthcare, with at least 36 proposals related to medical treatments across 21 states. In April, Arkansas passed the first ban on affirming healthcare for youth, with a policy that threatened to discipline or revoke the licenses of doctors who provide it. Experts and clinicians had strongly objected, arguing that the state was prohibiting care that is considered standard and best practice, and advocates said it was one of the most extreme anti-trans bills to ever be enacted. So this is what happens when you get a country that is moving further and further down the fascist path. You get all these different politicians who are often, Christian fascists, basically, and they punish anybody who is other. They have this they hold up this idea of heteronormativity. They're sex negative. They're anti-LGBTQ. They're anti-women. I mean, they're Islamophobic. They're often just generally racist. I mean, it's completely a distortion. I always put Christian in quotes because it's nothing remotely like anything that Jesus would have been advocating. So, but this is there are a lot of bigots who use this idea, this bigoted idea of Christianity, this invention, to oppress others. That's really what it is, and also to make money. They usually start all these, family this and family that organizations, so they can, and religious organizations, so they can get a tax-free status and they can rake in the money, and they draw in other bigots. And this is what happens when you have a capitalist system that has basically atomized society, and it's also it's about and you get the corporate media that is about division and causing drama, and so they'll be constantly promoting these transphobic articles or highlighting these bigots, and it is just the most disgusting thing to do, to vilify and bully vulnerable trans children who already have enough on their plate. They already have enough to deal with. If they don't get these hormone blockers, then they become more noticeable. I mean, if you're trying to be, unfortunately, we're in a society where to not be bullied, you have to be passable, in quotes. And passable means you have to be able to pass as a woman. What women, this stereotypes, this gender stereotypes of what women are supposed to be, what feminine is supposed to be. These are all constructed. Or you have to, be passable as a male if you're a trans man, and you have to, these are things that society still requires of people. I hope I live long for the day when it doesn't matter what people look like, what they sound like, what they wear, what they don't wear, what gender they are, what their sexual preferences are. How many, there can be so many different genders, and there are, and that is okay. The diversity is celebrated. I mean, seriously and truly, we're on the edge of extinction with the climate crisis, and this is the fucking bullshit that people are carrying on about, that these politicians are trying to drum up and cause, division in society and hatred of vulnerable groups. I mean, it's hard to imagine anything more pathetic. what on earth is wrong with these people? Because trans people, there is no threat to anybody. These trans people are just trying to live their lives and not be interfered with, not be vilified or demonized or called a pedophile or called a predator of women or called or being accused, like J.K. Rowling, of trying to destroy the idea of women or whatever, and all these TERFs that aren't really radical, they aren't really feminists, they're just transphobic people who are caught up in such bullshit. They have no interest in understanding trans people. You'll never ever see anybody who is transphobic interviewing a trans person, and that includes Joe Rogan. I don't think I've seen him ever. I don't really watch him anymore because it's just, there's too many things wrong with that show. But, you know, he's always going on and on about trans people, but you never ever see him actually interview anybody that is trans. And that, to me, tells me everything about Joe Rogan and other people like him. I mean, they need to fucking get a grip. Trans people have been around for thousands of years. This isn't some newfangled idea. So anyway, when they refuse to provide healthcare for these trans children, they end up not having these hormone blockers, and they end up sort of developing into something that they're not, and they're not passable, in quotes, and it makes life harder for them. And so this is actually a punishment. It's a punishment for those that are different. It's a punishment for anybody outside heteronormativity and the binary. That's what this is. So we must be completely against any of this sort of punishment and vilification of other. To be going along with this or to be silent about it is to basically condemn many, many children to a very, very, a life that is going to be much harder for them than it need be, and worse, they could end up taking their life, because that's what tends to happen if a trans person is not supported in any way and is already feeling completely outside of, is being kind of ostracized in many ways in a heteronormative world, in a binary system, and they end up oftentimes killing themselves, or they end up as victims of violence. So, you know, that's Arkansas for you. And there are other things, there are other things here that you can read, and I'll leave a link to this. I haven't actually read all of this article. But anyway, you get the idea that when you ban healthcare for trans kids, and when you ban their ability to block hormones and to get the care that they require, you're condemning them to a much, much more difficult life, and possibly even to death, because a lot of trans people have enough to deal with in their life, just trying to fit in and not be the targets of bullying and harassment. And then when you go and do that to them, when you don't give them the health care that they deserve, you'll end up possibly even where a trans person will take their life, particularly young, vulnerable trans kids. So anyway, now I'm going to play this Letters for Trans Kids. That's the hashtag. It's by Jessie Gender. And I urge you to share this, and also share any sort of positive letters, hashtag Letters for Trans Kids video that you see, so that trans children in the United States in particular feel that they're being supported despite all these hateful, bigoted laws that are being brought in by bullies and cowards.
Hey everyone out there, my name is Jessie, and I came out as trans at the ripe old age of 22 years old. When I came out as trans, I was incredibly nervous and scared. I was worried that my parents would accept me. I was worried that the world would hate me. I was worried that I would never be able to live a life that I wanted to live. Even if I came out as trans, would I be able to transition? Would I be able to be the person that I had always dreamed and desperately wished that I could be? I was worried about all of those things, and they were legitimate worries. But I was so lucky that when I came out, I was showered in love, and my parents accepted me, my friends accepted me, and over the course of the next few years, I have become the person that I've always wanted to be, that I wanted and dreamed.
So Jessie Gender has her own YouTube channel, and she's very fortunate that her parents accepted her, which is more often than not the case. Most trans kids, it's not the case. And of course, these awful laws that have come into the United States, into various states, that are just transphobic, straight up transphobic, are going to cause the deaths of many trans teenagers and younger children. And this is an absolute tragedy. And this is why this letter writing to trans children, putting it out as a hashtag, is very, very important. And I hope that anybody who believes that trans rights are human rights will support this letter writing campaign, which is under the hashtag Letters for Trans Kids, I think it is.
To be when I was a young kid. I know a lot of that was an absolute privilege, and I know many of these tools and things that I had access to in order to reach this place that I'm at right now are not afforded to every single person. I wish that they were. And that's what we're seeing today. A lot of the things that trans people need to reach the place that I am at being taken away from them by politicians and numerous other things, trying to vilify what it means to be trans and what trans people need.
And this, unfortunately, we seem to be going backwards. We really do. Any gains that have been made by the LGBTQ community seem to be being wound back. Look at this don't say gay nonsense that is just hateful homophobia that's happening in the US. And this is part of this hanging on to heteronormativity, but it's also driven by often Christian fascist groups that basically want to take rights away from not only the LGBTQ community, but they want to take away rights from women, as you can see with these draconian abortion laws. Terrible punishment. It's a great punishment for people that are trans, basically.
Need to get access to being able to follow that path that makes us the most happiest that we can be. It all makes me feel so scared, and I'm a trans person that's been out for such a long time and I'm confident in my identity and who I am. And so I can't even imagine what it must be like for all of you out there who may be younger, who may be a young trans kid trying to figure out how to walk that path and feeling all of this horrible ways that the world feels like it's treating trans people right now. And I wish I could tell you differently, but I can't tell you that it's not understandable to be afraid and scared. But what I can tell you is this. The journey that I have been on has made me the happiest that I've ever been. I know that if I went back in time and got to meet my younger self would be so shocked and happy to see who I've become. So I want you to never doubt that the journey of being trans is a beautiful one, an amazing one. And you are so lucky to be who you are. And life is all about figuring ourselves out. And you are already on the path to doing that. You're doing it before many of us.
So a couple of years ago, I was involved in a campaign to take gender off birth certificates. That was part of the campaign, a trans campaign. I'm not trans myself. I'm a trans ally. So I was in the background. I wasn't speaking about this issue, but I've had many people close to me that have been trans over the years, and I'm well aware. I cannot imagine what it's like to be trans, but I am well aware of some of the struggles because I've been privy to candid conversations about it. And all trans people want to be able to do is to live their life and to not be vilified, not have propaganda put out about them, not to be demonized, and just to be able to live their life. And they want to be able to be free of being attacked, violently attacked, and in some cases, for example, in the United States, with black trans women, they are often killed. And often this is by people who go out with them, and then somebody finds out that they've been with a trans woman, and then they feel they've got to kill that trans woman. Something like that. It's this ridiculous transphobia which causes violence, and this is the same thing. All these different discriminations cause violence. So these laws are definitely another step up in the increased violence we're going to see in the future towards trans children and trans teenagers and trans adults. These awful laws that have come in, these bigoted laws that are often pushed by religious groups, and which is often they're at the center of it usually. They are going to cause the deaths and suicides of many, many trans kids and trans teenagers and trans adults. So that's why we need to push against these dreadful, dreadful laws that are just punishing people for being different, punishing the other. That's what this is. This ridiculous idea that trans people are some kind of invention in this 21st century, that they're doing it for some kind of lark or something, or they're doing it to be outrageous, or they're perverts, or they're some kind of, all these ridiculous, hateful narratives that come out about trans people. I mean, trans people have been around for thousands of years, and that's something you won't hear these hateful religious groups saying, or these hateful politicians. They've been around for thousands of years, and usually they've actually been held up as somebody that is special and revered. That's the past experience of trans people in Indigenous tribes. To be trans is not uncommon in various Indigenous tribes all over the world.
And on that note, you inspire me so much. I wasn't able to come out until I was 22 years old. And so to see so many of you young trans people figuring out and having the words and being able to stand up for just living the life that you want to live at such a young age, I am in awe of all of you. So don't ever doubt that you are brave and strong and freaking amazing, because you are. You inspire me every single day. But the last thing that I want you to know is that while the world seems big and scary, and there are those in power who are assholes, frankly, that there are people who love you and care about you. Because one of the biggest things for me that I have found as a trans person is a community that values me and loves me more than I have ever felt valued and loved in my entire life. Not just in my immediate family, but in all the people that I've met, the community, the LGBTQ community that has uplifted me and stood by me, the allies of the LGBTQ community who stand with us. Such amazing, wonderful people who fight every day to make the world a kinder, better, and more wonderful place. So I want you to know that you are never alone in all of that. That you have a community out here who loves you and cares for you. So I understand that it's scary, and you have every right to be scared. And I want you to make sure you take care to protect yourself first and foremost in whatever way that needs to happen. But just know that you are not wrong for being trans. In fact, you are very, very right. You are amazing and wonderful and powerful and brave. And I stand in awe of you.
So anyway, please, I'll leave a link to the original video of that, Letter to Trans Kids, and you can find all the information in the information section of that video. Remember, we must always remember trans rights are human rights. Trans people are humans that deserve all the rights of any other human, and we need to educate ourselves on that and stop being ignorant, stop being silent, because the trans rights issue is where the gay rights was about 30 years ago. That's where we are in some ways, maybe 25 years ago, and it's got a bit of catching up to do. And with all this backlash, this kind of some of the fascist backlash that we're seeing, the bigoted backlash, this sort of homophobic, transphobic, and all of that. That is something we need to push against. Otherwise, we are going to end up going back 30 or 40 years where people are being killed regularly and being beaten up regularly, even more so than they are today, which is still absolutely appalling. And the rate of killing of Black trans women is I think 30 women a year, basically, something like that. Every year, there's at least a couple of dozen black trans women that are killed. So let's do our best to speak up for trans rights, to stop being in the dark about it, stop not understanding it, and stop being silent when we hear transphobic remarks, because every transphobic remark all adds up to cause the deaths of people who are just like us, but they're different. Difference is okay, diversity is great, and we should celebrate diversity. Thanks for listening.